Hello, I'm Arhamuddin and I have a history project to do. So, here are the top 10 moments in US history, or whatever. Christopher Columbus was a dude from the Kingdom of Castile in Spain. He really wanted fame and fortune, and so he set off with his gang in hopes of making it to India through a new route, and to come back with spices and stuff that would make him rich. When Columbus came on accident to America, he thought it was India, which is why he called the Native Americans living there Indians. Columbus then proceeded to do horrible things to them, like raping with his men to transmit diseases, and taking pretty much all they had with the help of their weaponry from Spain. A lot of it is documented in his journal. I chose this as an event because it's crazy how little people know about the stuff Columbus really did to the Native Americans. Even crazier is that we have a holiday centered around the dude. Oh, and this event kind of started our country anyways, so I had to include it. 1892, a girl was found to have smallpox. Back then, in those old-timey days, people were obviously oblivious to what smallpox was, and probably hadn't seen it before. Their reaction? Claiming the girl was a witch. More and more girls started getting smallpox, and this did not help the situation. Trials were held, in which townspeople would determine if the girl held was a witch, which is how the event got the name of Salem witch trials. The whole thing turned into mass hysteria, with people just claiming they were possessed by the devil and crazy stuff like that. Even a 4 or 5-year-old girl was accused of being a witch, and at this point, people were convicted of witches for pretty much no reason. It was kind of just who could make the best fairy tale in court. Thankfully, it ended in 1693, because people realized the whole system of determining witchcraft wasn't effective. Now with that, 200 people being accused of witchcraft, and 20 people hung up for their made-up crime. I chose this event as the top 10 because it sits as a reminder to me of how crazy everything was back then. The Salem witch trials were, and are, very interesting to learn about. The Bill of Rights are simply the first 10 amendments in the U.S. Constitution, including freedom of speech, religion, and a couple others. They are rather straightforward rights, but are in no way unimportant. The Bill of Rights was ratified in December of 1791, yet are still used to this day. Obviously, a lot more have been added over the years. However, the Bill of Rights simply isn't clear enough to keep up with the modern issues today, which is why there have been various cases regarding amendments. For example, does freedom of speech allow us to say incredibly offensive, vile, and violent things with no consequences? And that's just to name one. Still, the Bill of Rights are very substantial to our country, and while they're in no way perfect, they're still used every day of our lives. I honestly consider the Bill of Rights to be a boring topic, but I included this in this top 10 events because of how relevant it is to this country and how it's how we settle major issues. We need the Bill of Rights, even if they aren't the most perfect. The Boston Massacre was an outbreak that resulted in multiple people killed. On March 5th of 1770, in, Boston, America was still under British control, so it made sense for there to be many British soldiers stationed there. What is fascinating about the Boston Massacre is that nobody knows who exactly started the event. You see, the leading theory historians believe is that some townspeople were provoking the British soldiers, and when one civilian yelled fire, a British soldier shot and killed someone. A fight broke out, of course, and ultimately some soldiers were convicted and imprisoned for murder. I chose this event because it's intriguing to me that to this day we aren't sure who started the fight, and I feel the same way about other parts of history that to this day aren't fully understood. We're staying in the times of the British colonization of America. It's December 16th of 1773, and the people are fuming over the laws and acts passed by the British, specifically taxes. The Tea Act has recently been passed, which was, a tax on tea, and you could say this was the breaking point for the people of America, the last straw. 60 American colonists threw 342 chests of tea into the Boston Harbor as an act, a protest against the British. As a result, the Boston Harbor was shut down by the British until all the tea was paid for. Ironic. I chose this almost entirely because of how hilarious I find this event to be. The biggest thing that people could do is throw tea into the ocean. Granted, it would be difficult to do anything else really, but still. The presidency of Andrew Jackson was a really, really wild one. Andrew Jackson was a crazy guy, a hooligan. How he was elected it still baffles me, but it was what he did during the presidency that has me absolutely fucked. You could rarely find him outside of a bar, drunk as the man could be, and he was almost always fighting someone. I would like to emphasize that, actually, Jackson had challenged over 100 men to duels, almost always because of stupid matters that were a result of true drunk men doing drunk things. Jackson had very surprisingly only killed one guy, a guy by the name of Charles Dixon, who they dueled because of a horse race. I won't even go deeper into that. Oh, and as for what he did politically during his presidency, he paid off the national debt and made a relationship with some foreign countries much stronger. But who really cares, right? I chose this because I've never heard anyone talk about Jackson at all, let alone what the menace did to people. It's wild. But he actually did some pretty cool stuff politically. Oh, and I forgot to say this because I got carried away, but Andrew Jackson was actually a really good war general. He also issued a new currency, and that's about it. The Industrial Revolution lasted from 1760 to 1840. Basically, we started working in factories and producing stuff with machines rather than hands. The Industrial Revolution also sparked the new inventions such as typewriter. But unfortunately, like all the good things in history, comes the very, very bad. In this case, it was the labor. Working in factories and machines may have been easier than building all the stuff by yourself, but the strict and harsh conditions of the factories were definitely brutal. If you lost an arm on the job, you lost an arm, but no breaks for work, and the working hours weren't any better either. But the pay must have been good, right? I added the Industrial Revolution to this because it was an enormous change in how people earn money and jobs. It's difficult to imagine how our country would be today without the plethora of inventions made during this period. Like the Industrial Revolution, the Communication Revolution was a revolution. Anyways, the Communication Revolution lasted all throughout the 19th century, and it was pretty straightforward, the time period in which an abundance of new ways to communicate were born. We went from only communicating through written mail that would take months to get to the desired individual and get a response back, to much more convenient federal posting service. And, of course, telephones. This revolution brought us some cool stuff like photographs, a much easier way to share precious moments. I chose the Communication Revolution because you can't really talk about our history without talking about it, because of how much it changed us. It's very similar to the Industrial Revolution in terms of effect. It's 1855, and you're a brokey who's living a very mediocre and low-class life. Cue California, where you can hit it rich. Utah, where you can live a peaceful life as a businessman. Nevada, where you can do whatever Nevada people do. And Colorado, where you can enjoy the luxurious views and scenery, or something like that. There are many like you in the period of 1840 to 1860, and the way they solved their broke life issue was by taking various routes to eastern states in order to start a new life. Of course, these trails were in no way safe, and more often than not, half your family would die in this expedition. The Oregon Trail was arguably the worst, which most stories of death and craziness originated from traveling on this trail. It was a 6-month-long journey, and the amount of resources you can take on your carriage were very, very limited, especially if you were taking your family with you. The conditions of heat and absence of vegetation were nightmarish, and is why so many people were killed on the trail, and why so many went mad. But for those who made it, they got to live a perfectly average life. With a couple best friends and sibling gods, of course. I chose this because it's a genuinely fascinating part of our history, and this is what people had to go through back then for a decent life. It makes me grateful in a way for how easy and painful my life is compared to theirs. As I've already mentioned, the Oregon Trail was only one of the trails used by those traveling to the east. One of the more prominent trails had to do with the famous California gold rush that started in early 1848. A dude once found a bit of gold in California, and where there's some gold, there's a lot more underneath or around that area. This sparked a riot, and thousands of people made their way to California in hopes of making it rich. Spoiler alert, not many did. And besides, if you did find a fortune, it wasn't completely free, and it might have come at the cost of an arm and a leg. No, literally. I chose this because I've always found the California gold rush super funny, because you'd have to be really, really dumb to do such a thing. Granted, people back then weren't as bright when it came to these sort of things, but still, could not have been me. Okay, we're finally done. I don't really have an outro plan, so this is all improvised. But thank you to Abidar, Nahid, and a couple of other friends that helped me with this. This was pretty hard to make, but in the end, I think it was really worth it. Thank you.